So this is something I touched on before, it's weapon proficiency. And there's two major reasons that I see why this is important. First, it shows that you cared. In High Guardian Spice, the way she's holding that bow in the splash art that is at the start of every single episode is just so clearly wrong. You don't have to be an archer, you just have to understand the basic functionality of how a bow works to look at how she's holding it and know that that's not how it works. And the fact that that made it into the start of every single episode shows a phenomenal lack of effort that is echoed throughout the rest of the series. And the second reason, and what I consider to be the most important reason, is characterization. Displaying a skill makes the character feel as skilled as the writer is claiming that they are. John Wick should look skilled. He's supposedly a master assassin or whatever. Keanu Reeves went through actual firearm training, learning how to really use guns effectively as you move through an area to add realism to it, because he wanted the character to look like he knew what he was doing. That is good, that is skilled, and that comes through when you're watching it. He doesn't look like an idiot flailing the gun around, firing off into the air, and it adds a serious feel to his character. It affects the character, it affects the mood, it affects the theme of the movie. Compare that to how Deadpool fights with a gun, and he fights zany, wacky. It's not a serious fight at all. And a good example that I can compare is actually Anakin and Kylo Ren, both of which are emotionally unstable teenage boys who have been turned to the dark side by a corruptive older influence. And the Anakin versus Obi-Wan fight, despite the fact that the dialogue was an absolute mistake from start to finish, was gone over by Shadiversity. And if you don't know him, he knows a lot about melee combat and is way more pedantic than I am about it. In a good way, the nicest possible way that you can be pedantic. But there were very few moments in the Anakin versus Obi-Wan fight where it was just cool for the sake of cool. It was very serious and they had reasonable reactions. When they got into clinches, they tried to take opportunities out of it instead of staring at each other menacingly and pushing off. That's a relatively minor issue that I'm willing to rule of cool out. Plus there was that part where they were flourishing within a foot of each other for some reason, but we'll ignore that. Overall, it was a very well choreographed fight. Meanwhile, if you're watching Ren fight in any of the movies, he's flailing his sword around like he thinks he has the power of God and anime on his side. And this doesn't mean it needs to be perfect. The rule of cool lets you get away with some not so accurate bits, such as an underhanded grip on a blade. For those who don't know, an underhanded grip is almost always the wrong way to hold a sword. There are very, very few situations where that would be advantageous to you. And if you're leading into the fight holding your sword like that, then you're probably leading into a fight you're about to lose. We decide to let that go every now and then, but we need to know that every one of those makes the fight a little less serious. And if all the movie has is non-functional shots, then the makers can't expect people to find the action exciting, or the characters to be good at what the movie claims they're good at. I get that we're getting into kind of a gray area as to how cool it can look versus how functional it can be, but you have to have some kind of functional fighting in there, or else the fight just isn't serious. It isn't epic like they tried to play it off in The Last Jedi. At the very least, Power Rangers knows it's about zany, over-the-top ridiculousness, and they own it. They know what they are, and they're owning it. They're not trying to make you feel like it's a super serious battle. But in The Last Jedi, they wanted you to believe that that fight was some kind of epic confrontation. They went in and killed the leader of the Last Order. That should be something that's relatively difficult to walk away from. But because of how ridiculously bad the choreography was, they killed the most powerful person in that order, only to have to fight their way out past a bunch of suicidal Muppets. So in summary, the media should make it look like they picked up the bow like a person with a functioning frontal lobe would, not like they fell down the stairs and got tangled in it. They should have their skilled human gunmen move like they have a ranged weapon and are afraid of being shot, not miss a dozen shots at someone running straight at you. And the skilled swordsman should fight with the serious style of a competent swordsman, not with all the believability of shoving the lightsaber up his ass and breakdancing the enemy to death. That is not to say that that wouldn't be an objectively significant improvement on The Last Jedi movie and an objectively funny way to watch him win the fight. But I feel like that would undercut the seriousness of the tone they were going for just a tiny bit. Like, share, follow, comment, subscribe, and let me know in the comments, did you notice just how ridiculous the choreography was in The Last Jedi? If you went back and watched the third prequel, do you think you would notice just how much better the choreography was with lightsaber fights? And mostly I want to hear from people who have no swordsmanship experience. Just by looking at it, can you tell that there is a significant amount more skill being displayed in one versus the other? It being past the year 2000, it's remarkably rare for me to get into a sword fight on a daily basis. So I'm not a master swordsman by any means, but I could still tell that one of those was a display of skill and the other one very much was not. Bear in mind, this does not apply to a character who's supposed to not be skilled at fighting. If the character is supposed to be bad at fighting, then it's okay for them to be bad at fighting. But the point with Time is that she's supposed to be good at fighting. The point with Rey and Ren is that they're supposed to be good at fighting. Ren was supposed to be trained to use the lightsaber. He's supposed to be at least decently trained. But if I have anyone here who is actually a fan of the throne room fight in The Last Jedi, tell me why you enjoyed it. Let me know. I'm legitimately curious. Were you just kind of coasting through the movie, not really paying attention? I know there are exceptions to every rule, but if you don't believe that this is a rule that you should keep in mind while making a serious fight, feel free to go down and be entertainingly angry in the comments, and you're going to have to, because the only way someone's going to give a fuck about you disliking a video is if you comment now. Which reminds me, because this video has 100% likes for all you know, I'm selling some oceanfront property in Nevada. Click the link in the description to buy it.